with the onset of COVID and the world kind of turning inside out, we're all kind of in this space where we want to learn new things. We want to turn a new leaf. We want to become better or different after this mess is over. And that can create a lot of anxieties that we're not going to get into. But this is definitely a skill that I'm willing to learn and I'm excited to learn and is pretty valuable. Learning languages is, I feel, a lot more valuable than a lot of, at least English speakers, American English speakers, think. So how I'm going about this is, I don't really have the money for like an instructor, but I do know a friend of a friend who speaks French and actually teaches French and was willing to give me all of their notes, which was super, super helpful, including homework assignments and weekly goals. So I'm following that. I'm also following some YouTube videos that are helping me with things I don't really understand. I'm texting him if I ever have any issues. So I kind of have like a semi-instructor, but I'm basically learning this by myself. And how I'm going to go about this is I'm going to use a program called RemNote, a program called Notion. If you're familiar with the channel, you know what that is. And I'm going to be using just a good old-fashioned pen and paper notebook. But I am using those instructions, those notes I was given, to outline this little system. Essentially, for the first few weeks, it's just dissecting sentences, figuring out grammar, memorizing words, memorizing conjugation, and reading French text, solving problems, watching French movies, immersing myself, and try my best to understand through context clues. So let's get into it. So starting with Notion, I set this up in a way that is like kind of a wiki. This is where I'm going to put everything as a library, my French library. So right up top, I have homework. This is my first week of homework. I have to work on my number pronunciation because I'm not doing very well at that, and pronunciation in general. Work on decks. This is going to be over in RemNote. I'll show you in a moment. Dissect sentences from reading/viewing, and the goal for that is 4+ verb conjugation. So I'm finding verbs in these sentences, and I'm conjugating at least 4. Also, I'm reading for context without translating. So this is also something I'm going to go over in a moment. Next is the action plan. So this action plan was actually inspired by a YouTube video I watched, and it breaks down French things I'm doing through the day and how I'm helping myself learn. So Monday through the weekend is its own column. I have morning, workday, and evening. So in the morning, I want to listen to a French podcast. There is a podcast called Coffee Break French. I'm also looking for other podcasts that I can listen to right now. Next is reading. So reading is very specific, and I'm going to get to that later in the video, but it's essentially just reading things in French. And for this week's assignment, to understand the context of the reading without translating as best I can. And then during the day, I'm going to use this app called Hello Talk. This app is having conversations with native speakers. So I would have a conversation with a native French speaker, and they would have a conversation with me. I give them advice on their English. They give me advice on my French. So this is sort of the immersion factor. I know being in quarantine, being immersed in a language is very, very difficult. So this is sort of my way of navigating that. Next is grammar. That is me focusing in specifically on RemNote, but focusing on just the grammar. Then the decks is all the vocab I'm given in the week that I need to put into my decks and using those flashcards every day, or most days. Then Tuesday morning, I'd put everything into Notion. So I'm not using Notion at the same time as RemNote. I'm mostly in RemNote. Notion is a place where I just collect things. I'm collecting words, I'm collecting sentences, I'm making connections, and I'm categorizing things. So it's easier to understand. I'm using it as a big reference. Another option would be something like watching a French movie, watching YouTube videos in French, and that's pretty much it. So this is like an action plan. This will change over time for sure, but this is this week's plan. Next, I have these two k-text tables that are just showing me the letters and accents in case I forget. And I'm just using k-text here. I'm going to provide in the public link all of this. Next are links to videos and written resources. So these are my Webclipper tables. I'm using Webclipper for these. So any videos I find online about French or about learning languages better, I'm putting in here. So for instance, here's one called 5 Best Language Learning Apps in 2019. Another one about pronouncing the R in French. One about why do French people sound French. Going back to those written resources, these are like websites that are giving me grammar advice or have really helpful tables for me to reference. So I'll also use Webclipper for this. Next are all of the words. So I have a table for verbs, for nouns, for adjectives, adverbs, and sentences. We're going to go through this in a moment, but first let's go into RemNote. So let's start with the card setups. So if you're familiar with Roam Research, where it is essentially just a note-taking app with backlinking capabilities, that's what RemNote is, except with a twist. So you're able to create flashcards in this program. And the backlinking isn't as intense as Roam. It's more inclined for note hierarchy. So nesting pages into pages and accessing them easily. There's also a tagging system that's pretty intuitive, and it's very, very nice for people learning things. If you need to memorize things, there's also a neat template function that makes writing notes, especially repetitive notes, very easy. So let's first go into how this kind of is set up. So the first thing I learned about was accents this week, and the final constants of some words being silent. And here are some examples I was given. With these examples, I went into this website called Reverso, and I found the definition of these words I was given. I extracted a little audio clip, sounds like this.
Coup.
Right? Let me get a better example.
Marchand.
All right, so that's what I'm getting from Reverso. What I'm also doing inside these cards, I'm asking myself what gender this word is. So this is my noun setup. So let me show you how these flashcards are made. This side is the front of the flashcard, the French name, and this side is the English translation, the back of the card, separated by 2 colons. Down here in its child, so this would be considered the concept, I am given a prompt to speak. So I'm going to see in my flashcard speak and an empty space. In that empty space, I will say the word out loud, and then when I show the answer to myself, this audio clip will appear.
Coup.
Next is a question prompting me to answer the question, what gender is this word? This is how it'll look. I'll have the English translation, and it'll prompt me to write it in French. It'll prompt me to speak. I will speak. I'm not going to embarrass myself here. The audio clip will appear to see if I'm correct.
Coup.
If I said it correct, smiley face. Then it'll ask me the gender, male, correct. You kind of see how this works. Next, I am tagging these words. So if it is a noun, I'm tagging it with noun, vocab word, and another tag to categorize it. For instance, coup is versatile. So it's used in a lot of different contexts in French, from what I understand. Something like hero would be an identity word, cat would be an animal. But all of these are nouns, and I also want them to go into my vocab tag. And these tags are decks. So if you're familiar with Anki, it's basically like you're creating a deck. If I come up here to decks, I'm going to see all of my decks here. So these are all my tags. I put them here on purpose. So what I have is nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, finance, identity, versatile, quality, quantity, workplace, season, weather, stuff like that. And I'm collecting, with every tag I create, a new card in that deck. And I can go into, say, verbs, and everything that is tagged with verb will show up here, and I can go ahead and practice this rem with or without spaced repetition that are just verbs. So to create these tags, I go double hashtag at the end of the line and just search for noun. If it's not already there, I'll create a new rem, go into that rem and make it a document and throw it into this page. So that's an example of a noun. Let's go into adjective. So I'm kind of setting up adjectives a little bit different. So in this adjective, slight, I'm tagging it adjective, vocab, and quality, because this is describing the quality of something, not the quantity. Those are my two separate sort of adjective buckets. Again, I'm getting that audio clip, and I'll show you how to get that in a moment. I'm asking myself what the gender is, if it is applicable. I am also giving myself an example sentence. Now, when we go into Reverso, which is the website I use, it does give you examples of sentences with words, and I'll grab the simplest one I can find and put it in here for me to learn. So that's with adjectives, because I want to make sure I can use this adjective in the correct way to describe something. And I'm labeling these sentences with hashtag sentences. For adverbs, I'm doing something a little bit similar, and I'm just getting to small phrase examples. Like for already, I've already finished. So for verb conjugation, for verbs, I'm conjugating each verb. Now I'm not going through and putting every single possible conjugation in there right away. I'm only putting them in when I'm learning about that conjugation. So I'm not going overboard with it. But I am setting up something called a template so that I will have these conjugation titles already there for me. So what I mean by this is the indicative conjugation of to be is something I'm learning right now. I can go down and see the conjugation of to be in the present, the past, the future, and I will be prompted to write all of those answers. So we have the present, the imperfect, the future, all the way down. And these will prompt me. So when I go in, I can type out all the answers. So if I go to show answer, I would have to type out everything here. Okay? That would be the conjugation of to be. And that's in the indicative conjugation. So that's how I'm setting that up. Now, all of these titles, conjugations, are in this blue link because I created a template so that I don't have to write all of this out every single time there's a verb. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. I'm going to go to search, automatically add template. That is a power up rem. Now you can see my new verb template here. I call it new verb. I actually don't need the speak here. And I create every title of the conjugation, all of the children inside. So I'm prompting myself to find the present, the imperfect, future, and so on. And then in subjunctive, the same thing, conditional, same thing. And every single one of these children is a slot. So I'm just going / slot, turn into a slot, which it is. And I'm doing that for each and every one and the children inside the children. And you can see this little weird symbol over here. That's indicating that it is indeed a slot. This new verb is not a slot because that is the concept, that's the name of the template. So when I go in to my notes and I want to create a new verb, say new verb, and then definition, I'm going to tag this with hashtag, so hashtag twice, new verb, and I can find new verb automatically add template up here. Over here it says 6 unfilled slots. You can also use Command Alt P to get this up, but you can also do this, add all rem to this document, and everything will show up. As well, if I want the children of the children, I'll just kind of do this. I don't know if this is, yeah, there you go. Now I have the children of the children, and so on and so forth. Hope that made sense. Down below that is a section called homework. This is homework I need to do this week. I put it into a to-do box. So how I'm going to divide this homework into different days of the week is I'm going to use dates. I'm going to use the daily document feature in RemNote. So first I'd probably go exclamation point, type in today. And if I'm working on anything today, I am just going to start writing notes right inside of this date. Now if I go to click on this date, I'm prompted to daily documents. And what I do is I'll come into here in daily documents and create a portal to my French page. So to August 16th. And I can start writing notes in here so I'm not really as distracted by all those other notes above me. So this is an example of some notes. And if we go back into the French notes, it should show up under the date. This is an example of some notes. Now I'm using Portal because I still want this to be in this French folder. I want this all to appear in one page. Just to go over it one more time, it's /portal, and you're going to add a portal and find that concept in another note. So if I were to find daily document, for instance, I can see everything within that page, and I can also edit it. Now say I want to write some to-dos for tomorrow. So we'll go exclamation point, tomorrow. And I'll just go in and /to-do, write some to-dos. And then my next class, or the next time I consult with this guy, or I go through the next week's notes, I'm going to start creating headers with this gray background to differentiate. So I'll go say if I'm learning more about accents, part 2, I would make this H1 and it will be gray for me. And then green for homework. So I'll probably start creating documents to sort of break this page up. For right now though, I'm just doing a waterfall of notes. So let's start getting into how I'm finding these elements for these words. So these words are actually coming from examples that I'm given in the notes for each thing. So this accent is giving me these words, but it's not giving me the gender, and it's not giving me an example, obviously, of an audio clip. And it's not really giving me more thorough explanations. So I have to go into Reverso and do that myself. So how I'm going to do that is let's search baby. I'm not pronouncing things in this video. I'm working on my pronunciations, okay? I'm not embarrassing myself though. So for this one, we have NM, that means it's a noun and it is male. So now I know the gender. And I have, if I want to find an English definition, I go to French English and I can find it here. So how do I find the audio clip? In Reverso, there's this neat thing. You see this little pointer and a magnifying glass, if I were to click on this word, I can go to speak.
Bébé.
Now, if I want to extract that audio, I'm going to go either control click or right click, inspect, network, make sure we're on media, network, media, and I'm just going to press that again.
Bébé.
And this will show up here. Now, this isn't the case for every website. I know Google Translate can do this for you and Reverso. So let's go control click or right click, copy link address. Exit out of this, go back to RemNote, and speak :/audio. So I'm prompting myself to say this. I paste that link in there, only audio, insert, and there it is.
Bébé.
So again, it's inspect, network, make sure media is clicked, and then prompt it to speak, and it will show up. So same goes for sentences. Now, if you want to find an example of a sentence, the best place to go is this little button here called context. I'm going to click it, and it will give me all these examples of baby used in a sentence and the English translation. And again, I can use inspect if I want this audio clip, and press this little pronunciation button here.
Bébé. Trop débordé pour remarquer un bébé.
It's a little robotic, but it works. So I'm able to find the gender and the audio clip with that, using context for example sentences. Now for conjugation, there is also a button we can use. So let's put to be in here. And go to French conjugation. It will prompt you to this conjugation part of the website and give you every single conjugation in here. If you do want to use Google Translate, you can do the same thing with inspect and network and media.
Déjà.
And it will show up there as well. So that's how we're getting the audio clips, the gender, the definition. Now there's certain instances where a noun is also an adjective, or can be an adjective. For instance, merchant. So within this card, we have our typical audio clip and gender, but also the adjective alternative, which here would be market. And just like, adjectives and adverbs, I either give 3 short examples or I give 1 long sentence example. For this one, it's short phrases that I found in the dictionary. And if I go to this card, it should come up like this. It should give me the original noun above it, and then give me the word with adjective in parentheses, and then prompt me to say what that is in English. As well, the parent rem is just giving me a short description of this part of the lesson, which is a little bit of a cheat, so I know how to pronounce it. I know that the final letter isn't going to be sounded. All right, so now that we know how to work in RemNote, how am I putting all this stuff into Notion? Well, that's where these tables come in. And like I said before, in my action plan, Notion isn't something I'm using with RemNote at the same time, unless I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm putting out time in the day to put everything from the prior day into Notion. And I'm also using Notion for that piece of the homework, which is to identify elements in a sentence. So let's start with verbs very quickly. We have the same exact thing we saw in RemNote with all of the conjugation. This is only the indicative because that's the only thing I'm working on right now. And an example sentence, but we'll get to that in a second. I also have this link to a page that is a linked database to verbs, and it's giving me a different view of it. I really like this because it's more of a table view. It's easier to reference. Also, what I'm doing here, at a certain point, there's going to be a lot of words. So I don't want them all showing here on my dashboard. I am going to create filters on these databases to only show me stuff that I'm inputting within either today or the last few days, maybe the past week. And to do this, I'm going to filter, add filter. I have a property called created, and created is today or within the past week. All right. Now down to adjectives. Pretty much the same setup. We have tag, an example sentence if it applies, definition, maybe an alternative definition, 3 examples, a noun alternative, which in this case there is, and an adverb alternative. So this one does have a noun alternative, and I just click in here and I can see it right here. So nouns have a little bit more properties. I created tags, of course, the gender, what the word is when it is plural, 2 possible definitions, an adjective alternative, adverb alternative, synonyms and antonyms, and example sentence. And what I would put into the. So if I were to say the noun, what would I use? So these synonyms and antonyms, in the notes I was given, that was a big part of it, was as you collect a pool of vocab to start connecting dots. This word is similar to this word. If I don't want to use this, what else should I use? What is the opposite of this word? This will start creating those connections. So adverb setup is pretty much identical to adjectives. What I'm showing in these cards for adjectives and adverbs are the examples, if they apply. Those short phrases or small sentences. Now the sentences database is where I go for dissecting sentence structure. And that seems to be the goal for the next few weeks according to these notes. So I wanted to create a space for that. So when I find a sentence, I am going to put it in here, determine what type of sentence it is, the translation. This one's coming straight from RemNote. This is an example from an adjective, I believe. According to my homework, it tells me I need to find the verbs in the sentence, conjugate that verb, or understand what the conjugation of that verb is, find all the nouns, the adverbs, and the adjectives, also the subject. And when it comes to audio clipping in Notion, I think I'm only going to do it for sentences, because I think it's a bit much to put it for every single word. It might, I don't know, it seems like too much, but for here, I do have it.
Légère. Légère commotion cérébrale, quelques brûlures et ecchymoses.
So if you want to go straight from Reverso and put this translation audio into Notion, in the same exact way I put it into RemNote, you can go into Notion. So just like in RemNote, I'm going to go /audio at embed link. I'm going to paste that in. Embed audio.
Être.
So it looks different, but this is how it's going to show up in Notion. If this looks a bit like, I don't really like how that looks, I like how this looks, what I did was I'd have to actually download from RemNote. This is a bit annoying. So when I go to put in the audio clip in here, there is a little button here, and I can download the clip. And then from there, I can upload it from my computer into Notion. It's more work, but it'll give you that nice clean look. All right, so now let's do a little bit of an example. So I need to be reading for context. I need to be reading French things. So let's just grab a random word here, go into dictionary. There's another link called news. So I am going to click news and see what in the news has the word brother in it. That's dark, but The one about Trump's brother passing away. Let's use that one. So the thing with news articles that are really nice is these headlines are short and they're sweet, to the point, and for a beginner, if you're dissecting sentences, if that's part of your action plan from your instructor, these are great. You can find new words in here, new adjectives, new nouns. You can figure out how a sentence is conjugated. And also, the body of a news article is pretty short. And also, the style is pretty straightforward. So these sentences aren't too complicated. So what I'm going to do is use my Webclipper. And I'm going to save this page to sentences. I'm going to come out of here because it's making my laptop scream. And I can find that sentence in no tag. It doesn't have a tag yet. It'll give me the URL. I don't really want the article in here. I love how I chose this article. But here's an example. So I'm just going to use this sentence. First, I'm going to make sure I know what type of sentence it is. Just by looking at it, I have no idea. But let's say it's declarative. It'll show up in here, and then we can start working on it. And as I find verbs, like here's a noun that we already have in our system, so let's find that. There it is, and I'll just add it here. And when I go into the noun, the example sentence will show up. And now if I'm using this word in multiple sentences will show up. So that's basically how I'm approaching this as a beginner. Again, using RemNote pretty much the entire time, using Notion to Wikify everything, and to do that homework for dissecting sentences. So what I plan to use RemNote for in the future is as I get into conversations more, I want to include them into separate pages on here. So what I would do is come in here and say add document to this folder and probably call it conversations. And what I'm going to do in here is most likely just everything from Hello Talk, everything from my semi-instructor, any advice he gives me, any conversations we have in French, I'm going to put into here and use either Portal or linking to other words with rem links. So I'll show you an example. Say, this is an example of a sentence. Now, I know I have this word in my database, so if I highlight it, I can see where it's used elsewhere in my entire RemNote program. So if I click it, I can actually create a portal to the card. As well, I can link it. So if I double bracket open and find it, and I should be able to find it in here, I can also create a little link, the rest of the sentence, and click into that card like that. So that's how that backlinking function will be helpful for me in the future. But right now, I'm just sticking to learning all of this vocab and conjugation. So I really hope you found this useful. I kind of quickly went over everything, but this is how I am starting all of this. I am going to publicize this page so you can take a deeper look at it. I am going to publicize it as I work on it, so do not take all of this as factual. I'm a beginner. If you're just starting to learn this language, the structure of this system may help you for inspiration, but I am going to keep it up there, and I'm going to keep it public as I add things to it if you are interested. And I will also leave a link down below. I wrote a little tutorial on how to make templates, so if this was a little bit confusing about templates in RemNote, I tried to make it make more sense in an article, and I'll link that down below as well. And I will see you guys next time. This was a long one. Thank you for sticking to the end if you did. Have a good one.